The Old Republic gave us many badass Sith. Some were Lords of Pain, some Planet Eaters. Many just really needed to chill. But there are a few people who would deny that Darth Malgus was easily one of the most formidable and epic Sith to have existed. All too often, Sith are portrayed as caricatures of evil, people twisted by the dark side and hell-bent on some outlandish scheme, like unleashing an army of techno-beasts or consuming the entire galaxy. Malgus wasn't like any of those Sith. In many ways, he was what one would call reasonable, at least for a Sith. So much so that many people actively choose to side with him. Because Malgus wasn't just a Sith. He was a Sith with an ideology he believed in, and someone who would give it his all to see his visions for his home come to reality.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Darth Malgus was born as Veridin on the stormy world of Dromund Kaas in the year 3700 BBY. Longtime fans who've watched our series on the history of the Sith will recognize the era we're in. Following the Mandalorian Wars and the Jedi Civil War, the galaxy had been at peace. With the disappearance of Revan, the Republic thought the Sith fully eradicated. That wasn't the case at all. A Sith Lord by the name of Vitiate had escaped with a group of loyal followers, leading a nomadic lifestyle for some time before they settled on the long-forgotten world of Dromund Kaas. There, Vitiate took the title of Dark Lord of the Sith and slowly rebuilt his Sith forces. Veridin was raised by a scientist in the Imperial Science Bureau and grew up tending to his father's zoological collection. From a young age, Veridin was trained in the ways of the Force, but also in deception, expectations, and personal conduct. These early teachings instilled in the young Sith a strong personal code of morals, which he abided by throughout his life. After some time training at the Sith Academy, Veridin was taken on as an apprentice by Darth Vindican and finally took on a new Sith name, Malgus. During a trip to Geonosis, Malgus encountered a Twi'lek slave being abused by her owner, whom he killed. He took the Twi'lek on as his own, and despite her official status as a slave, he took her as his lover and treated her with respect. Keep this in mind for later. After 400 years of seeming peace, the Sith Empire attacked. One of the Sith's first targets in 3681 BBY was the holy world of Korriban, which the Jedi had kept under their control for centuries. Malgus and his master Vindican took 2 Fury-class interceptors and boarded the Republic space station above the planet. The 2 Sith landed in the hangar bay, preventing anyone from escaping and sounding the alarm. But they had Jedi to contend with. Vindican took on the Zabrak Jedi Master Kal Sendarak, while Malgus fought his Padawan Satil Shen. Initially, Malgus was pushing her back effortlessly, but when the Jedi's master passed her one of his lightsabers, she recovered. Vindican attempted to unalive the Padawan, but yet again, her master saved her, then ordered her to escape. Enraged that his prey was fleeing, Malgus teamed up with Vindican against the Zabrak master, who fought them off valiantly. Despite it being a 2v1, Darak managed to severely wound Vindican. Even though he evened the odds, Malgus proved too powerful and cut him and eventually his master down, liberating Korriban for the Sith. From then on, Malgus believed he was the one destined to bring about the fall of the Republic and the Jedi. Following their victory on Korriban, the Sith began expanding throughout the galaxy, taking over vast swaths of territory in the Outer Rim and heading coreward. By 3667 BBY, Malgus had been promoted to the rank of Darth, recognized for his power and tactical genius. For those reasons, most likely, he was selected to lead a Sith invasion on Alderaan. In a past video, we've detailed the fateful Battle of Alderaan. Using an attack from the Imperial fleet as a ploy to draw the Republic forces far away, Malgus bombarded the planet from orbit, then landed thousands of troopers and droids alongside hundreds of Sith planetside. Malgus himself took point, leading a pilgrimage of fire and ruin through the planet's rich cities and lush forests. Unfortunately for Malgus, members of Havok's squad, an elite Republic Spec Ops team, had remained planetside for unrelated reasons. The Commandos launched a guerrilla attack against the invading Imperials. Among these soldiers was Jace Malcolm, who would have died at the hands of the Sith had Satil Shen, now a Jedi Knight, not intervened. Jedi and Sith began to duel in earnest, relying on both their lightsabers and the Force to pulverize their opponent. With some help from Malcolm, Shan was eventually able to defeat the Sith, first throwing him into a cliff, then bringing the cliff down on top of him. With Malgus presumed dead, his Sith forces were routed, especially when Republic reinforcements returned to the system. The Battle of Alderaan was lost for the Sith, but Malgus survived, albeit with critical injuries. He would return to the battlefield, but since his defeat at the hands of Satil Shan, he relied on a rebreather. But Malgus wasn't held back for long, regardless of his injuries. During the later half of the war, he was in charge of the Sith Empire's Outer Rim campaign. After the Sith Empire failed to provide him with adequate support, he lost Ord Radama to the Republic and was forced to flee towards Sith space with his remaining forces. He was pushed back to Ziost, which also fell to a Republic advance, but was able to repel them at Asher's Re against all odds. Malgus's victory was highly praised, so much so that the Sith government promised him unfailing support in future battles. Despite the betrayal of an inside agent, Malgus was also able to retain Sith control of Sereno, much to the displeasure of the local noble houses. Later on, Malgus was tasked with retaking Ord Radama, which he believed would restore his honor. This time, he planned for it perfectly. With a Sith assault on the planet's new capital city backed by droids, troopers, and Imperial commandos, the city fell quickly. The battle for control of the planet lasted several weeks due to Jedi interference, but Malgus was eventually victorious. His victory did, indeed, restore the Empire's faith in his skills, which earned him a place on the invading force that was gathering, because the Sith weren't satisfied with taking over half the galaxy. The Great Galactic War had been raging for almost 30 years, and while the Sith Empire was overall coming out on top, the war wasn't something they could sustain in the long run. What the Empire needed was one final debilitating blow that would bring the Republics to its knees and force a surrender. In 3653 BBY, the Sith Empire reached out to the Republic and offered peace. The peace talks were to take place on Alderaan, where representatives of the Sith Empire, the Republic, and the Jedi would meet. However, this was yet another ploy. While the Republic was distracted with the promise of peace, Darth Angral and Darth Malgus were tasked with assaulting Coruscant. The former would focus on assaulting the planet itself, while Malgus was to attack the Jedi Temple located in the capital. Remembering his old vow to wipe the galaxy clean of the Jedi, Malgus took to his assignment with verve. Malgus's plan was simple. He was to enter the temple alone, serving as a distraction so that 50 Sith could slip inside and destroy the planetary defense mechanism housed within the edifice. With Coruscant's defenses down, Angral could swoop in and rain destruction down upon the jewel of the Republic. When Malgus made his appearance, the Jedi took to his presence with extreme prejudice. Temple security guards first tried to stop him, but he dispatched them easily. Jedi Knights amassed at his location, including Zalo, whom Malgus had faced off against on multiple occasions. But Sith reinforcements soon arrived, tipping the scales in Malgus's favor. The battle was fierce. It was an all-out free-for-all with combatants like Malgus, Zalo, Adras, and Daru, Malgus's Twi'lek wife, trying their best to defend their allies and kill their enemies. Despite the Sith's numerical advantage, the Jedi were powerful, which infuriated Malgus. But they had reached a tipping point. When Zalo injured his wife, Malgus went into a berserker rage from which he drew the strength to annihilate the enemies before him. He cut down Jedi after Jedi until he had finally killed Zalo, leaving his body in the burning husk of the Jedi Temple. From its burning entrance, Malgus watched the planet city fall to the hands of the Sith in a hail of fire and agony. With the Republic's capital falling into Sith hands, the Republic had little choice but to offer a complete surrender. The results of the sacking of Coruscant was the Treaty of Coruscant, which leaned heavily into the Empire's favor. Despite peace falling between the two superpowers, The galaxy was holding its breath, and Malgus, he was biding his time. Contrary to what one might expect, Malgus did not leave Coruscant a satisfied man. On the one hand, he was overjoyed to have brought ruin to the Jedi Temple and watched the Republic capital burn. The sight of the Republic and the Jedi Order on their knees was what Malgus had dreamed of for almost 30 years. However, his satisfaction had been stripped away from him. The first issue was that the Sith Empire accepted a Republic surrender. Malgus was left malcontented by this decision, as a fragile peace was vastly different to complete obliteration of his opponent. Despite how necessary the end of the war had been for the Sith Empire, it was not an outcome Malgus could stomach. Another thing he found difficult to reconcile was the realization that his political opponents, namely Darth Angral and his apprentice, Darth Adras, had used his wife against him during the sacking of Coruscant. Despite being a Sith, Malgus loved his wife truly and completely, an emotion he came to realize contradicted the Sith teachings he had been taught to believe in. And therein lay the problem. Alongside the Sith teachings Malgus had been exposed to at the Sith Academy, he had had other influences. His father's early lessons had stuck with the Sith, and through the lens of his father's wisdom, Malgus came to see all the flaws in the Empire. After the Treaty of Coruscant was signed, a Cold War brewed between the Republic and the Sith Empire. For the next 20 years, Malgus served the Empire's governing body, the Dark Council, undertaking several missions for the Empire. Amongst others, he ordered the destruction of Hammer Station, located the Foundry, commissioned a superweapon for the Dark Council, and led expansive expeditions into the unknown regions. But more importantly, Malgus made allies. You see, Malgus was an unconventional Sith. He hired many alien mercenaries, and through his dealings with them, learnt about their languages and culture. He created diplomatic ties with the Voss and the Chiss, both of whom saw him favorably. Because Malgus, unlike the Sith, didn't believe in humanocentrism. For most of its history, the Sith Empire drew a hard line. Humans were the superior species, and all alien races were to be nothing more than slaves. But that wasn't the only core Sith belief Malgus challenged. As he slowly built his power base, Malgus couldn't help but notice how the Sith's petty hatreds and power struggles did more harm than good. The Sith's greatest enemy was themselves as they vied for power, destabilizing the Empire. He also took grave issues with the Empire's deification of the Sith Emperor. Thanks to a series of dark side rituals, Vitiate was still the Dark Lord of the Sith, but in Malgus's eyes, he did nothing for his empire. The Emperor had been absent for a very long time, leaving the running of his empire to the Dark Council. Worse still, during the Cold War, a Jedi strike team managed to infiltrate the Citadel and kill him, allegedly. All these factors put together only increased Malgus's disillusionment with the Sith Empire, which peaked near the end of the Cold War. Following the Jedi attack on the Citadel and the Sith Emperor's murder, Darth Aho, another member of the Dark Council, launched an invasion on the planet Ilum, aiming to control its rich supply of crystals. Malgus, however, had other plans. Instead of supporting his fellow Sith, Malgus aided the Republic counteroffensive, supplying valuable intelligence and ground support. This way, Aho was defeated, and Malgus could take his seat on the Dark Council and his sphere of military offense. As part of his role, he led Imperial missions to secure a steady supply of Adagan crystals, which he was intending to use to power the stealth generators of an armada of ships. While serving on the Dark Council, Malgus did try to effect change, rallying for alien advocacy and policy reforms within the Empire, but staunch Sith conservatives shot him down. This turned out to be somewhat of a mistake. From his position on the Dark Council, Malgus had amassed a wealth of resources. During his various assignments for the Empire, he had also gathered a number of allies, particularly among alien races. The moment his stealth armada had been completed, Malgus went full Chad and declared himself Sith Emperor. But Malgus's empire would be different. He envisioned an empire free of infighting and the petty squabbles that had weakened the Sith. With his allies, his stealth armada, and a droid army he had built to rival Revan's, he set out to purify the galaxy through war. Unlike other Sith before him, Malgus didn't reject others joining him. In fact, he welcomed those who had been as malcontent as he to join forces with him and realize their dream of a Sith empire stronger than ever before. With his army of Sith rebels, Malgus initially set out in the unknown regions, which he had ventured into on behalf of the Empire years ago. His army saw several early victories. With the Sith Emperor's death announced to the greater galaxy, many Sith turned to Malgus as the next obvious choice for a leader. Unfortunately for Malgus, the Republic and Sith Empire had a common enemy for once, and neither wanted a powerful and populist Sith Emperor on the throne. Malgus's army suffered a humiliating first defeat at Ilum. Then, a strike force infiltrated his space station, making its way through its defenses until they encountered Malgus in his new throne room. Although the fight was fierce, Malgus eventually lost. Rather than allowing himself to be killed, he set the space station to self-destruct and went out with a bang. However, as everyone knows, if the death isn't on screen, it ain't real, and that was the case with Malgus. For the better part of a decade, Malgus was presumed dead. Many events transpired throughout the galaxy. The Republic and Empire went back to poking at one another. They averted the Dread War. They were subjugated by the internal empire of Zakul, then eventually overthrew it. Over the years, many rumors circulated regarding Malgus' survival, and they were finally proven true at the onset of the Third Galactic War. Out of nowhere, Malgus appeared during the Empire's invasion of Ossus, revealing himself as the new Emperor's Wrath, a second to the then Sith Empress Asina. It was a huge shock to the greater galaxy, but the Republic had little time to waste. The moment he appeared on Ossus, Malgus took command of the assault and personally led the attack on the Jedi colony, presided over by Jedi Master Nost Durul, forcing them to evacuate. After Ossus, Malgus set his sights on Dantooine, which he saw as a threat due to it bordering Sith space. Because of its location, it was not only an excellent staging ground for Republic attacks, but a great resupply point for the Republic's Outer Rim operations. As he had done before, Malgus hired mercenaries to storm the planet and take it by force, repelling the Republic. But Malgus' greatest hit was Corellia, specifically the advanced Republic shipyard known as the Meridian Complex. The shipyard was deemed key for a Republic victory, and so the Sith were hellbent on destroying it. Malgus and his ally, Darth Krovos, assembled a massive fleet and set course for Corellia. He took advantage of the Republic's lack of fuel ships, so he sent other teams to engage and destroy Republic reinforcement fleets at other key locations before they could come to Corellia's aid. Within the Meridian Complex, Malgus fought a group of Jedi and Republic sympathizers until an explosion knocked the station askew. The Republic teams escaped, but Malgus was left injured. Malgus was left aboard a medical ship where he had another vision that left him frightened. Seeking a remedy for his psychological state, he left for the abandoned Jedi Enclave on Dantooine. Within the Enclave, he learnt of Darth Nul, an ancient Sith Lord who might be able to help him. His search led him to the Temple of Nul on the planet Elom in search of a holocron. However, he found that the Sith and Jedi had beaten him to it and were now fighting over the prize. Malgus interfered and eventually won the holocron, finally revealing his plan. He stated the Jedi and Sith left many young ones behind that they deemed unworthy and urged the Padawan to give him the holocron so they could find her brother. Although Malgus left with the holocron, he also left the Padawan alive to consider his words. Eventually, Malgus was defeated by a Republic strike force outside the temple and taken prisoner aboard Carrick Station, where he was contained in a special prison. Despite being a prisoner, Malgus seemed unbothered and vowed that the Republic's troubles were only beginning. What he had begun would only end with a galaxy in flames, and he, Malgus, would be the one fanning them. He would not stop until he had purged the galaxy of the corrupt and incompetent powers that governed it. And then, he remained silent. But what do you think? Although he went a little off the deep end near the end, we personally agree with every person who wished they could have sided with Malgus. Do you think Malgus would have been a better leader for the Sith Empire? Would his policy reforms have made a difference in the Sith's eventual fate? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.